Hello everybody and welcome to my April video blog from Strasbourg. On a very beautiful day when it seems summer or at least spring has finally decided to arrive. This time last month I was cycling through ice and snow, so it's very welcome. And I speak to you, actually it's the morning of Baroness Thatcher's funeral, and you'll note that I'm in Strasbourg rather than in London. I chose to stay here because, as you know, I'm the Chief Whip, which means I have to be here for votes, although most of my colleagues will actually be at St Paul's. So I wish them the best of days there. I hope the sun shines. Just a little reflection on Mrs Thatcher. I always think of her as Mrs T as opposed to Baroness Thatcher or Lady Thatcher or anything else. I hope that's not disrespectful, but the reason I think of her as Mrs T is that's what we called her when I was first at work. She became Prime Minister in 1979, and that was the year that I graduated from university and went to work for Ford Motor Company. My first job was on the shop floor in Essex in a factory. And I was the first woman to be taken on as a graduate trainee and working in the production side. And it was pretty tough. There was 20,000 men and me. And one of the things I had to do was actually drive a forklift truck. And I used to get a lot of derision. People used to laugh and stand in the way and, you know, women can't drive forklift trucks. But I did. And one day there was little deputations trying to stop me getting on with my work. And I remember saying to them quite clearly, look, get out my way. If Mrs T can run the country, then I can drive a forklift truck. And it caused great hilarity, but it was true. And people talk about her being an inspiration, but that was the level at which actually having a female Prime Minister made a huge difference to my generation. Regardless of what you think of her politics, and I admire them very much, but I know many people don't, she was in herself a huge inspiration to us all. So it's a sad day today. Meanwhile, life goes on here in Strasbourg, and I firmly believe that Mrs Thatcher would have wanted us to be here doing our job for the UK. And that's what I'm doing today. There's a couple of things that have happened this week that you might be interested in. The first has been some votes on climate change, most specifically on the ETS system, which is the emissions trading system. In effect, what that does is it adds huge costs to European business. And we have this phenomenon called carbon leakage, which is we effectively price out of the UK and European markets businesses like, say, aluminium smelting or cement making. So they're no longer done here, they're done outside. In the case of cement, for example, we have massive imports now from Egypt, which of course is not covered by the European trading scheme. So it's much cheaper, its costs are cheaper. We're still using the cement here in Europe, so the carbon is still being released into the atmosphere, but we've simply priced ourselves out of the jobs here in Europe. And I think this is just ludicrous. So I was very pleased this week to be able to vote against the ETS backloading, which effectively increases the price of carbon yet again in the UK and in the rest of Europe. So we voted against that, and we narrowly defeated the Parliament's proposal, or the Commission's proposal in Parliament, by only 14 votes. And the proposal has been thrown out. So I think that's a victory for common sense. The other thing which has been on the news here has been the release of the information about the so-called horse meat scandal. That is to say, giving the information on the testing. Our Secretary of State, Owen Paterson, back in February, went to the Commission and asked for random testing throughout Europe, which was granted. And the Commission picked up 75% of the costs rather than the Member States. And we had the results of that yesterday, showing roughly a 5% presence of horse meat in beef. And the other issue around bute in horse meat, 0.5%. Neither of those are perfect, they should be zero. However, neither do they fit into the category of sensational and something must be done immediately. And when you look at the full analysis on the figures, it's down to a few particularly fraudulent activities. And I think the clampdown on that fraud should give consumers confidence. But the work on that is going on. I'm actually going to be shadowing a report here in the Parliament on horse meat, and I'll be able to report back to you at some later date exactly what recommendations the European Parliament will be making. So on that note, I shall close. Again, Very nice to speak to you again. I'll talk to you again in May.